Hi, I'm Tom Lynch, and in this video, I wanted to kind of pull some pieces together from a couple of other videos that have been shared recently. One is on this what I call an inversive literacy model, where I have this sort of framework for taking reading and writing and trying to do more over the period of a unit to intentionally sort of ensure that reading and writing are kind of intertwined, and that there's dedicated time not only to like reading skills but also to the writing process and to reading for craft. And then in another video I shared something called learning loops, which is learning loops is kind of an approach to almost like a station model, where you actually use the classroom configuration and kind of individual work, partner work, group work. You use those, and you have students kind of rotate into different parts of, or kind of in a loop over time. You have them experience these different kinds of learning experiences, but not in one single period. Usually, it's like class by class by class, etc. And I'll put the links to those videos in the notes to this one. But for this video, what I wanted to do was kind of look briefly at how some of these different pieces are pulled together, and to kind of just share like a little bit of an example. So I'm working with a school in the Bronx called APR. And one of the things that we've been talking about there is like how do we take the valuing of like culturally responsive pedagogy, and how do we integrate it into a 5-week, let's say, ELA unit, middle school ELA unit. And so let's take a look at some of the ways in which we do that. So on this document, what you see in this unit is we have this sort of introduction that provides a little bit of a rationale in terms of like how we've designed the unit and why. And its focuses on this particular question: does who you are, does where you were born and where you live determine who you can become? And so it's an essential question, and it's something that we think the students can grapple and wrestle with in a kind of big life sort of way. And then we have kind of a rationale for for why we designed the unit the way we did. We have some belief statements in terms of kind of what beliefs about teaching and learning and literacy. We have some summaries of what research says, and then we have what we call a plan of action, which is just saying like these are some of the things we're going to try to do to bring to life kind of culturally responsive pedagogy in the context of literacy instruction in our English language arts classes. And then you'll see here, like even in the unit, we have kind of a brief overview, a schematic if or something, if you want to call it that, for the inversive literacy approach. And then we have a breakdown of the learning loops. Again, you can look at some longer videos that I have up online just to see these explained a bit more. But this is where we really try to start pulling some strings together. So we have some different threads. As many schools do in New York State, middle schools in particular, the school is using the expeditionary learning curriculum that's provided by New York State. And so expeditionary learning, provides all sorts of essential questions and big ideas and particular texts that it recommends to read, and even mid and summative assessments, all tied to these questions and texts. And that's wonderful. The issue with it, though, however, is that sometimes like the questions that they're posing don't speak to all communities or all students or all teachers. And so what we wanted to do with the school is we really wanted to try to come up with some essential questions, pilot some essential questions that we thought would be more meaningful to the community, meaning both students and teachers. But we wanted to do so in a way that kind of tried to complement what the school was already doing with the expeditionary learning curriculum. And so that's where these essential questions come from. So what you'll notice about these essential questions, one is we do think that they are essential, meaning we think that they're ones that students can authentically engage with, and leveraging both their experiences and also different texts and readings. But they're also ones that still sort of subsume the essential questions and big ideas that have been put forth by expeditionary learning and by the state. Then what we did is we said, okay, well, we have this essential question, we have this inversive literacy model, we have we have some mid and summative assessments provided by expeditionary learning, and we have these learning loops. But what does all of this mean? How do we start to pull it together? And so we started to put together a pacing calendar. And so what you'll see here are a couple key things. Like this is how we really tried to operationalize all of these different parts. Okay, so one is we have a 5-week calendar unit. Okay, and we're saying that kids are in school for 5 days a week. So what you'll notice here is that these are 2 weeks, and for these 2 weeks we focus on loop 1. And that loop 1, just to like scroll back, that loop 1 is essentially this first part of the inversive literacy approach, and during that first loop there's going to be 2 kind of cycles. 2 loops essentially will take place during the first part of the unit. So there's 2 weeks. Students are going to cycle through a loop each week, and the focus of this loop is on reading for content and intrigue. Okay. At the end of that loop, then you'll see that there's a mid-unit assessment, and that's coming from expeditionary learning. Then in the middle, which is loop 2, we focus on reading for craft and reading like writers. So that's where we're in the middle of the inversive literacy approach, the model there. And you'll see then that we have a 1 week sort of focus on that. Now, one of the things I should point out at this point is you'll also notice that there are introductory lessons, there are loop lessons, and there's also these recurring things like reading time and Socratic seminars. So one of the values that we have is that we do want to provide students more structured opportunities to read at school. Not all students can read easily when they're at home. So we do that by trying to bake into the curriculum, like this is reading time. And we also know that it's really important for students to become comfortable expressing their ideas and engaging in different kinds of critical thoughts. So we have Socratic seminars recurring. Then in the final loop, we're focusing on writing for purpose. And that's why for these 2 weeks, right, it's on writing for purpose, and the calendar reflects that as well. So that's where, again, if we kind of scroll back, we'd be back over here at this last part of the inversive literacy model. And just to give like a quick, kind of glimpse at what some of these other documents look like. This is just sort of an example lesson plan template. You'll see that it has like a do now, right? It has the mini lesson. It has the guided practice. And it has this is an introductory lesson, so it's a little different in structure, but this one's going to emphasize a gallery walk and class discussion, and it ends with an exit ticket and homework, etc. But the idea is that we try to set all of this up in a way so that teachers can just kind of click on what they need, and then there it is, and it's digital, and over time we can all refine it together. That's also one of the ultimate goals. More traditionally, then you'll see that during a given lesson, there's an individual lesson. I should say lesson's misleading. It's actually more accurately to say it's a learning activity. There's an individual learning activity, there's partners learning activity, and then there's a group learning activity. And there's always this sort of exit ticket as well. And so those are the main components, and that's kind of our that's our initial attempt at trying to say, like, well, if we want to engage in culturally responsive pedagogy, if we want to do so in a way that honors the relationship between reading and writing in terms of a literacy model, and if we want to do so in a way that exposes students to kind of a differentiated learning and kind of more of a stations approach, like here's a way to try to pull all of these different pieces together, and that's been our initial attempt.